I watched them beat my guide dog to death with baseball bats, laughing as he yelped and fell silent on the pavement. They were 5 teenagers in designer clothes, their expensive car idling nearby, and they did it for a viral video. I screamed, but they just drove off, leaving me alone with his broken body. The police arrived an hour later, took my statement, and promised to investigate. But by morning, the case was closed. No charges, no follow-up. The officer told me it was insufficient evidence, but I saw the way he avoided my eyes. I knew their parents had intervened. I was determined to make them pay. I lost my independence. Without Baron, I was trapped in my own home, blind and furious. I called the local news, but they never called back. Then, a lawyer's letter arrived, threatening a defamation suit if I spoke publicly. The pressure was immediate and suffocating, but as I sat in the dark, my fingers traced the grooves in Baron's old leash, and I remembered the license plate I'd memorized during the attack. It was a start. I wouldn't wait for justice. I'd create it. My hands shook as I dialed a number from memory, an old contact from my past life, before the blindness. He answered on the second ring, and I said only, "I need names." He hesitated, then replied, "It's dangerous, Elara." I hung up, the silence in the room now filled with purpose. The first name arrived in a text an hour later, Mason Thorne, son of a real estate mogul. I gripped my phone tighter, the screen glowing in the dark. They thought an old blind woman was harmless. They were wrong. I stood up, my cane tapping against the floor, and headed for the door. Outside, the world was blurry, but my resolve was sharp. I had a list to make, and I wouldn't stop until every one of them felt my loss. The night air felt cold on my skin, a reminder of what I'd lost. But I pushed forward. My first stop was the library, where I could use the accessible computers to dig deeper. As I walked, a car slowed beside me, its window rolling down. A voice I didn't recognize said, "Drop it, Grandma, or you'll regret it." Then it sped away, leaving me standing there, heart pounding. They knew I was digging, and they weren't going to make it easy. I sat in the library's computer lab, my fingers flying over the keyboard with the help of screen-reading software, pulling up everything I could on Mason Thorne. His social media was a gallery of privilege, tropical vacations, parties, and that same car from the attack. I found his address, his school, his friends' tags. I needed to identify all 5 teenagers and their families, mapping their weaknesses. It took time. Every minute spent here was a minute I wasn't healing, the emptiness in my house gnawing at me. The pressure mounted when a librarian approached, saying someone had called, questioning why a blind woman was using research databases. I smiled thinly and said I was writing a memoir, but I knew they were watching. Suddenly, the screen went black. The computer had crashed, wiping my search history. It was an unexpected disruption. I restarted it, my hands steady now, and found a backup file I'd saved, a list of names and photos from a school event. One face stood out, a girl with a distinctive tattoo, the same one I'd seen in the blur during the attack. Her name was Chloe, daughter of a city council member. I cross-referenced her with Mason, and they were in the same circle. But as I dug deeper, I discovered something odd. Mason's father was embroiled in a shady land deal, something the news hadn't covered. It was a leverage point, a crack in their armor. I printed the details, the whir of the printer masking my racing thoughts. Just as I gathered the papers, my phone buzzed. A message from my contact. "They're tracking you. Get out now." I shoved the printouts into my bag, my cane tapping urgently as I hurried toward the exit. The automatic doors slid open, and I stepped into the sunlight. but a shadow fell over me. A man in a suit stood blocking my path, his voice low. "Mrs. Elara, a word?" He flashed a badge that felt too polished to be real. I gripped my cane tighter, ready to swing if needed. "Not interested," I said, and pushed past him, hearing his footsteps follow. I didn't look back, but I knew this was only the beginning. They were scared, and that meant I was getting close. I hid in a corner cafe, the smell of coffee masking my fear as I spread the printouts on the table. I aimed to verify the land deal details and find a way to use it against Mason's father. It jeopardized my safety. Every stranger's glance felt like a threat, and I'd abandoned my usual routes home. The pressure intensified when I noticed a car idling outside, the same one from earlier. I called my daughter, but she brushed me off, saying I was paranoid. She didn't know about Baron yet. I couldn't tell her. She'd try to stop me. Then my phone rang, a blocked number. I answered, and a distorted voice warned, "Forget what you saw, or you'll lose more than a dog." The call cut off, leaving me trembling. But then I remembered an old friend, a retired journalist who owed me a favor. I dialed him, and he confirmed the land deal was real, with documents buried in public records. He emailed me files, and as I listened to them through my earpiece, I realized the Thorne family had bribed officials to cover it up. This was bigger than I thought. I packed up, leaving the cafe through the back alley, my cane probing the uneven ground. As I turned the corner, I bumped into a woman, Chloe's mother, the council member, her face sharp with recognition. "You need to let this go," she hissed, shoving an envelope into my hand before striding away. I opened it. Inside was a stack of cash and a note. "For your troubles." I dropped it like it was poison, the bills scattering in the wind. They thought they could buy me off, but they'd just given me proof of their guilt. I hurried home, my mind racing with plans. But when I reached my porch, the door was ajar, the lock broken. Someone had been inside. I stepped in, the silence heavy, and felt for the light switch. Nothing happened. Then, a creak from the hallway. I wasn't alone. I froze in the darkness, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had to survive this intrusion and protect what little I had left. It cost me my sense of security. My home, my sanctuary, was violated. I edged toward the kitchen, where I kept a heavy flashlight, my cane held like a weapon. The pressure was palpable. Shuffling sounds came from the living room, and I heard a whisper, "She's here." I flicked on the flashlight, beam cutting through the gloom, and saw two figures rifling through my drawers. They weren't professionals. Their movements were clumsy, teenagers maybe. One of them held up Baron's collar, and rage boiled in me. I shouted, "Get out!" and swung my cane, connecting with a thud. They scrambled, knocking over a lamp, and fled out the back door. I stood panting, the adrenaline fading, and surveyed the damage. Papers were strewn everywhere, but they'd missed the hidden compartment in my desk where I kept the important files. Then I found a dropped phone. One of them must have lost it in the rush. I activated the voice assistant, and it read out the last message. "Mum, we messed up. She has the documents." It was from Mason. I now had direct evidence linking him to the break-in. But as I scrolled through, I saw photos, not just of the attack, but of other victims, other animals they'd tortured. This wasn't their first time. I saved everything to the cloud, my hands shaking with fury. Then my landline rang. It was the police, saying they were following up on a disturbance reported by my neighbours. I knew it was a setup. They'd send me to a hospital, discredit me. I hung up, grabbed my go bag, and slipped out the back. The night air was cold, but I had a new destination: the newspaper office. If the police wouldn't listen, maybe the press would. But as I approached the building, I saw Chloe's mother talking to the editor through the window, shaking hands like old friends. I ducked into an alley, my hope crumbling. They had every angle covered. Then, my phone buzzed with a new email, an anonymous tip with addresses for all 5 teenagers. It was from my contact, but the timing felt too perfect. I opened it, and the locations glowed on the screen. One was a cabin in the woods, where Mason was supposedly hiding out. I knew it was a trap, but I had to go. I started the car I'd borrowed, the engine roaring to life. As I drove, the headlights caught a figure watching me from a distance. The man from the library, smiling. He raised a phone, and mine rang again. I didn't answer, but the message was clear. They were herding me where they wanted. I stepped on the gas, the road blurring ahead. This was my move, and I wouldn't back down. The drive to the cabin was long and tense, the trees closing in like shadows. I intended to confront Mason, to get a confession or something usable. It drained my energy. I hadn't slept properly in days, and the blindness made every turn a gamble. I pulled over a mile away, hiking through the woods with my cane, relying on memory and the GPS on my phone. The pressure was everywhere. Snapped twigs sounded like footsteps, and once I heard an engine cut off nearby. I reached the cabin, a rustic structure with lights on inside, and crept to a window. Mason was there, alone, pacing and talking on the phone. "She's not stopping, Dad. We have to do something." I recorded it on my phone, the audio clear. Then he mentioned a storage unit where they kept trophies from their hunts. My blood ran cold. They'd done this before, many times. I needed to get inside, but the door was locked. I circled around, finding a back window slightly ajar. I pried it open, the wood groaning, and slipped inside. The cabin smelled of pine and sweat, and I moved toward the sound of his voice. But as I entered the main room, he wasn't there, just his phone on the table, playing a recorded loop. It was a decoy. I spun around, and the door slammed shut behind me. A voice echoed from a speaker. "Welcome, Grandma. We've been expecting you." It was Mason, but he wasn't here. He was remote, taunting me. I felt along the walls, finding nothing but empty space. Then, a click, and the lights went out. I was trapped, blind in the dark, with no way out. I fumbled for my phone, but the signal was dead. The speaker crackled again. "You shouldn't have come alone." I sank to the floor, the reality sinking in. I'd walked right into their hands. But as I sat there, my fingers brushed against something metallic under the rug. A hatch. I pulled it open, a draft of cold air hitting my face. It led down, into a basement or tunnel. I didn't know where it went, but it was my only way out. I lowered myself in, the darkness swallowing me whole. Above, I heard footsteps entering the cabin, voices laughing. They thought they had me cornered, but I was already moving, deeper into the unknown. The hatch closed above me, and I was alone in the silence, with only the sound of my breathing to guide me. I crawled forward, the ground rough beneath my hands, wondering what I'd find at the end. Then, a faint light appeared ahead, and I heard whispers. Not theirs, but others. I wasn't the only one down here. I crawled forward in the tunnel, the rough ground scraping my knees, the whispers ahead growing clearer. They weren't the taunting voices of the teenagers. These were fearful, hushed tones. I had to identify who was down here and see if they were allies or another trap. Every movement sent pain shooting through my old joints, and the darkness was absolute, reminding me how vulnerable I was without Baron. Above, I heard heavy footsteps and muffled laughter. Mason and his friends were searching the cabin, thinking I was still upstairs. The pressure mounted as a beam of light swept past the tunnel entrance I'd come from, and I froze, holding my breath. Then, a hand touched my shoulder, and I flinched, but a soft voice said, "We won't hurt you. We're prisoners too." It was a woman, her grip gentle but firm. She led me deeper, where a small group huddled around a dim, battery-powered lantern. They were others who had crossed the thorns, a former employee blackmailed into silence, a neighbor who witnessed their crimes, all held here as leverage. This was an unexpected turn I never anticipated. I wasn't alone in this fight. They shared stories of the family's cruelty, and one man handed me a flash drive with financial records showing illegal transfers. But as we whispered, a noise echoed from the tunnel, a door creaking open. The woman gasped, "They're coming down!" I clutched the flash drive, my heart racing. We scattered into narrower passages, and I felt along the wall, finding a cold metal handle. I pulled it, and a hidden door swung open, revealing a staircase leading up. I climbed, emerging into a tool shed outside the cabin grounds. The night air hit me, and I heard voices approaching the shed. I slipped out the back, but as I did, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "We have your daughter. Stop now, or she pays." I stumbled, my blood running cold. They'd dragged my family into this. I leaned against a tree, gasping, the threat to my daughter echoing in my mind. I needed to verify if they really had her and find a way to protect her without backing down. The strain was tearing me apart, my focus split between revenge and family, and I could feel my resolve wavering. I called my daughter's number, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic set in. She never turned off her phone. The pressure intensified when I saw headlights on the road nearby, a car slowing, as if searching. I ducked into the bushes, my cane digging into the soft earth. Then, my phone lit up with a photo. My daughter, tied to a chair, her eyes wide with fear. The message read, "Last warning." But something felt off. The background was blurry, and I recognized her living room curtains from a video call last week. It might be a fake, a scare tactic. I remembered the flash drive from the tunnel and found a public library nearby that opened early. I hurried there, using the computers to check the metadata on the photo. It was edited, taken from her social media. Relief washed over me, but rage followed. They'd threatened my child to manipulate me. I accessed the flash drive. It contained emails between Mason's father and city officials, detailing bribes to cover up the dog attacks and more. One email mentioned a cleanup crew for witnesses. This was bigger than I thought. I saved copies to multiple cloud accounts, my fingers trembling. As I left the library, a van pulled up, and two men stepped out, heading straight for me. I bolted down an alley, my cane clattering, and hid behind a dumpster. They passed by, talking about securing the old woman. I waited, then slipped out. But my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my daughter, calling frantically. "Mum, some men were here, but I scared them off with a baseball bat. What's going on?" I almost cried with relief, but I knew they'd try again. I told her to leave town, and she agreed. But as we hung up, I saw a shadow move in the reflection of a shop window. Someone was tailing me, and they were getting closer. I ducked into a crowded diner, the smell of grease and coffee masking my fear, and took a booth in the back. I needed to plan my next move, use the evidence from the flash drive to expose them publicly, maybe to an independent journalist. It risked drawing more attention, and I was exhausted, my body aching from the night's escapes. The pressure was relentless. Through the window, I spotted the same van from earlier, parked across the street. I ordered coffee, my hands shaking as I stirred in sugar, and pulled out the flash drive again. On the diner's Wi-Fi, I uploaded the files to a secure site and drafted an email to a reporter I trusted from my past. But as I hit send, the power in the diner flickered and went out. Murmurs rose around me, and in the dim emergency lights, I saw the van doors open, men stepping out. This was a coordinated attack. I slid out of the booth and headed for the kitchen, pretending to look for the restroom. The staff was busy with the outage, and I slipped out the back door into an alley. It was a dead end, with dumpsters and fences. I heard footsteps behind me, and a voice said, "Nowhere to run, Grandma." I turned, gripping my cane, ready to fight. But then, a garbage truck turned into the alley, its headlights blinding, and the men scattered. I used the distraction to climb over a low fence, dropping into another street. My phone buzzed. The reporter had replied, "Got it. Meeting you at the old mill in 1 hour. Come alone." I knew it could be another trap, but I had to risk it. I started walking, my mind racing. When I reached the mill, an abandoned building by the river, I saw a figure waiting inside. It was the reporter, but he looked nervous, pacing. I approached, and he blurted out, "They have my family too. I can't publish this." He handed me back the files, his hands trembling. I took them, feeling defeated. But then he whispered, "Check the timestamp on the last email. It's from today." I did, and it showed Mason's father ordering someone to eliminate the problem. Me. They were escalating to murder. I backed away, and as I did, a shot rang out, hitting the wall beside me. I dove for cover, and in the chaos, I saw the reporter run, but not before dropping a small device at my feet. A voice recorder. I grabbed it and fled into the night. The sound of sirens growing closer. I hid under a bridge, the river's rush masking my panting, and played the voice recorder. It was a conversation between Mason and his father, planning my accident. I had to use this to turn the tables, maybe go to the state police instead of local. I lost my last shred of trust. Even the reporter had folded under pressure. My clothes were damp, and I was shivering, the cold seeping into my bones. The pressure was everywhere. Helicopters buzzed overhead, and news alerts on my phone showed my face as a missing person at risk. They were framing me as unstable to discredit me. I needed to get to a safe house, an old friend's cabin upstate, but it was miles away. I started walking, sticking to back roads, my cane tapping a steady rhythm. Then, a car slowed beside me. A woman rolled down the window. It was Chloe's mother, the council member, her face pale. "Get in," she said. "I want to help." I hesitated, but she added, "I can't let them kill you. My daughter is involved." But I didn't know it would go this far. This was an unexpected development, an enemy offering aid. I got in and she drove, explaining how the families were fracturing, some parents horrified by the violence. She gave me documents showing a slush fund used to pay off witnesses. But as we talked, her phone rang, and she answered on speaker. It was Mason's father, demanding to know where she was. She lied, saying she was at home, but I heard a click on the line, like a tap. We were being monitored. She pulled over, her hands shaking. "They know," she whispered, and shoved me out of the car, speeding away. I stood on the roadside, alone again, but now with more evidence. I flagged down a truck driver who gave me a ride north. As we drove, my phone lit up with a news alert. "Council member in car accident, critical condition." I felt a chill. They were silencing their own. When I reached the safe house, It was dark and quiet. I let myself in, but the door creaked open to reveal a figure sitting in the chair. Mason, holding a gun, smiling. "Grandma, you're finally here," he said. I froze, my mind racing for a way out. I stood motionless, Mason's gun pointed at me, the room's silence heavy with threat. I had to survive this confrontation and turn his overconfidence against him. My heart pounded, and I could feel the weight of everything I'd lost. Baron, my safety, now possibly my life. He taunted me. "You should have stayed out of it. Now where's the evidence?" I slowly raised my hands, my cane still in one grip, and played for time. "It's gone, Mason. I destroyed it." He laughed, stepping closer, the gun unwavering. The pressure was immense. I knew he wouldn't hesitate to shoot. But then, I remembered the voice recorder in my pocket, still on from earlier. I subtly pressed the button, hoping it was recording. I said, "Why did you kill my dog? Was it just for fun?" He sneered. "It was a joke, old woman. They all are. You're nothing." His words were cold, and I let him talk, drawing him out. He boasted about other attacks, naming places and dates, and I stored every word. This was my unexpected edge, using his ego to trap him. Suddenly, headlights flashed outside, and voices shouted, "Police?" Mason turned toward the window, distracted. I swung my cane, hitting his wrist, and the gun clattered to the floor. He lunged at me, but I kicked it away, and we struggled. I'm not strong, but I'm stubborn. I shoved him back, and he tripped over a rug, falling hard. I grabbed the gun, pointing it shakily at him. "It's over, Mason," I said. But he laughed again, blood trickling from his lip. "You think this changes anything? My family owns this town." Then, the door burst open, and officers rushed in, their lights blinding me. They cuffed Mason, but one cop took the gun from me, his grip firm. "Elara, you're under arrest for assault and breaking and entering," he said. I stared, stunned, as they led me away. In the squad car, I realized the voice recorder was still running. I had his confession, but would anyone believe me? As we drove, I saw Chloe's mother's car crashed by the roadside, and a thought hit me. This was all connected, and I was the loose end they needed to tie up. The car turned not toward the station, but down a dark, unfamiliar road. I gripped the seat, knowing this wasn't over yet. The police car sped down the dark road, away from town, and I knew this wasn't a standard arrest. I gripped the seat, my mind racing to figure out their destination and find a way out. Every bump jarred my old bones, and the fear was a cold weight in my chest, reminding me how alone I was without Baron. The officer driving glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his eyes hard, while the other talked quietly on his radio, mentioning a cleanup. The pressure built as we turned onto a gravel path, trees closing in, and I realized we were heading to an isolated warehouse by the river. I needed to act fast. I pretended to cough, bending over, and slipped the voice recorder from my pocket, pressing record again. I said loudly, "Where are you taking me? This isn't the station." The driver smirked. "Special holding, Grandma. For your own safety." But his tone was mocking. Then his phone rang, and he answered on speaker. It was Mason's father, yelling about containing the situation. The officer assured him, "We have her. It'll look like an escape attempt." My blood ran cold. They planned to kill me and make it seem like I resisted. This was an unexpected turn. I had their conversation on tape. As the car slowed near the warehouse, I saw shadows moving inside, and a figure stepped out. Chloe, holding a phone, her face pale. She wasn't supposed to be here. The officers got out, opening my door, and I stayed put, playing feeble. I can't walk, I whimpered, buying time. One cop grabbed my arm, and I let my cane drop, drawing attention. As he bent to pick it up, I kicked the door into him, scrambling out into the woods. Shouts erupted, and I ran, branches tearing at my clothes, the recorder still in my hand. I didn't get far before tripping over a root, falling hard. Footsteps approached, and I curled up, expecting the worst. But then, a hand touched my shoulder. It was Chloe, whispering, "I'm sorry. I have something for you." She slipped a USB drive into my pocket before vanishing back into the darkness. I lay there, stunned, as the cops closed in, their flashlights blinding me. One raised his baton, and I braced for impact, but a voice shouted from the trees, "Freeze! State police!" The world exploded into chaos, and I clung to the ground, wondering who was really on my side. I was hauled to my feet by state troopers, their uniforms a blur, and rushed to a secure vehicle while the local cops were restrained. I had to ensure the evidence on the USB drive and voice recorder reached the right hands without being intercepted. The relief was short-lived. My body ached from the fall, and I was shivering in the cold night air. A trooper named Evans briefed me. They'd been investigating the Thorns for corruption, triggered by my earlier emails. The pressure returned when he said, "We need your full cooperation, but your safety isn't guaranteed. They have moles everywhere." I handed over the recorder and USB, but kept a copy hidden in my sleeve, just in case. As we drove to a safe house, Evans explained the USB contained logs of payoffs and orders for the attacks, including names of all 5 teenagers and their parents. But then his radio crackled with a report. The local police chief was missing, and threats were made against my daughter again. I called her. She was safe at a friend's, but terrified. The enemy was striking back through any means, disrupting my plans. At the safe house, a small apartment in the city, I reviewed the files with Evans. One document listed a shell company used to fund the bribes, linked to a politician I'd voted for. I realized with a shock that this wasn't just about rich kids. It was a network protecting each other, and I was a loose thread. Evans left to coordinate with his team, and I tried to rest, but my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "We have your friend from the tunnel. Come alone to the mill in 1 hour, or he dies." It included a photo of the man who'd helped me underground, beaten and tied. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. They were using everyone I cared about to draw me out. I knew it was a trap, but I couldn't let another person suffer because of me. I grabbed my cane and slipped out the back, the city lights blurring through my tears. As I hailed a cab, I saw Evans watching from a window, his face grim. He didn't stop me, but I knew I was walking into their hands alone. The cab dropped me near the old mill, the place where I'd nearly been shot before, and I approached cautiously, my cane tapping on the cracked pavement. I intended to rescue the tunnel man and maybe turn the trap against them. The strain was immense. My energy was fading, and every shadow felt like a threat. The mill was silent, its broken windows like eyes watching me. I entered through a side door, the smell of damp and decay filling my lungs. Inside, a single light hung from the ceiling, illuminating the man from the tunnel, gagged and tied to a chair. No one else was visible. The pressure mounted as I untied him, his eyes wide with warning. He gasped. "It's a setup. They're recording this to frame you." Suddenly, lights blazed on, and cameras pointed at me. Mason's voice echoed from speakers. "Assault and kidnapping, Grandma. Perfect for the news." I froze, realizing they wanted to paint me as the criminal. But then, the man whispered, I planted a tracker on one of them. It's broadcasting their location. This was an unexpected advantage. I had a way to trace them. I helped him up, and we moved toward an exit, but doors slammed shut around us. Voices shouted from outside, and I saw figures through the windows, Mason and his friends, armed with bats, laughing. We were trapped. I pulled out my phone, activating the tracker app the man described, and it showed a signal moving toward us. But then came a shocking realization. The app identified the signal as coming from Evan's vehicle. Was he involved? The doors burst open, and the teenagers charged in. But then sirens wailed, and state troopers swarmed the place, arresting them. Evans arrived, his face unreadable, and took the tracker from me. Good work, he said, but his eyes didn't meet mine. As they led the kids away, I noticed Mason smirking, as if he knew something I didn't. Evans pulled me aside. We have to move you again. Your safe house is compromised. I nodded. But as we left, I saw the tunnel man being put in a different car, and he mouthed, Don't trust him. The doubt settled in my gut, and I knew I was still in danger. Back in another safe house, a cramped motel room, I sat with Evans, trying to piece together who to trust. I needed to verify Evans' loyalty and get the evidence to a higher authority. The strain was wearing me down. I hadn't slept properly in days, and the paranoia was a constant companion. Evans laid out maps and files, showing how the corruption reached into the state police, but he insisted he was clean. The pressure intensified when my phone died, no charger in the room, and Evans offered his, but I declined, remembering the warning. I asked about the tracker signal from his vehicle, and he brushed it off, saying it was planted by the Thorns to discredit him. Then his radio buzzed with an alert. The local police chief had been found dead, an apparent suicide, with a note blaming me for blackmail. I felt sick. They were eliminating anyone connected. Evans said, We need to act fast. I have a contact in the FBI waiting for your statement. He handed me a phone to call, but the number felt off. I pretended to dial, instead recalling a number from memory, an old friend in the Justice Department. I left a vague message, hoping it would reach someone. I shifted tactics, taking control without relying on Evans. Suddenly, the motel door shook, and voices shouted, Open up! Police! Evans drew his gun, telling me to hide in the bathroom. I did, but through the vent, I heard arguing. It was the local cops, demanding my surrender. Evans confronted them, and shots rang out. I crouched, terrified, until silence fell. When I emerged, Evans was on the floor, wounded, and the cops were gone. He gasped, They're here for you! Run! I grabbed his keys and the evidence files, slipping out the back. As I ran, a shocking thought struck me. Evans had been shot protecting me, but was he a hero or part of something else? I reached his car, but it wouldn't start. The battery was dead. Headlights approached, and I ducked behind a dumpster. The car stopped, and a familiar voice called out, Elara, it's me, from the library. It was the man who'd warned me before, now holding a flashlight. He said, I have a way out, but we have to go now. I hesitated, weighing the risks, but the sound of sirens decided for me. I got in his car, and we sped away, leaving the motel behind. As we drove, he handed me a newspaper. The front page showed my face with the headline, Vigilante Grandmother Wanted. They'd turned the public against me, and I had nowhere left to hide. The man from the library, who introduced himself as Leo, drove us to a remote farmhouse owned by his family. I needed to regroup and find a way to clear my name while exposing the truth. The isolation was a double-edged sword. It offered safety, but cut me off from help, and the exhaustion was a heavy blanket over my thoughts. Leo explained he was a retired investigator who'd been tracking the Thorns for years after they ruined his brother's business. The pressure built as news reports on the radio detailed the manhunt for me, with rewards offered for information. I sorted through the evidence files, finding a ledger that listed payments to judges and journalists, including one who'd interviewed me earlier. Leo showed me a hidden server where he'd stored backups of everything, and we started uploading it to secure sites. But then, the power went out. A storm was rolling in, and the lights flickered off. We worked by lantern light, the wind howling outside. The storm masked any approaching threats, altering the circumstances. I found an email chain discussing a final solution for me, dated that morning, and it mentioned a meeting at the Thorns' estate tonight. Leo suggested we go there, record it, and end this. But as we prepared, his phone rang. It was his wife, crying, saying men had come to their home threatening them. He paled, and I understood the danger of involving others. "I have to go," he said, and I didn't stop him. Alone again, I packed a bag with the evidence and a voice-activated recorder. I headed out into the storm, using Leo's old truck, the wipers struggling against the rain. The drive to the estate was treacherous, but I pushed on, determined to confront them. When I arrived, the gates were open, and cars were parked outside. A party was happening. I slipped in through a side entrance, the music drowning my steps. Inside, I saw Mason's father giving a speech to a crowd of influential people, boasting about his community efforts. I moved closer, the recorder in my pocket, and heard him say, "And we've handled the recent disruptions. Some people just don't know their place." The crowd applauded, and I felt a surge of rage. But then, a hand grabbed my arm. It was Chloe, pulling me into a hallway. Her eyes were red from crying. "You have to leave," she whispered. "They know you're here. They're going to kill you and make it look like an accident." I stared at her, and she added, "I have proof. Video of the dog attack from my phone. I'm done hiding." She handed me a small device, and I clutched it, the weight of truth in my hand. But as I turned to go, the lights in the hallway went out, and heavy footsteps approached from both ends. We were trapped, and I heard Mason's voice call out, "Found you, Grandma." The darkness felt like a coffin closing in. Mason's voice echoed in the dark hallway. "Found you, Grandma." And I gripped Chloe's arm, my heart pounding. I had to get us out of this trap alive and protect the video evidence she'd just given me. The darkness was absolute, my blindness amplifying every sound, and I felt the toll of my recklessness. I'd walked right into their den. Footsteps approached from both ends, and Chloe whispered, "There's a secret passage behind this panel," her hands fumbling against the wall. The pressure mounted as lights flickered on down the hall, revealing Mason and two of his friends, armed with pipes, smirking. Chloe found the latch, and a section of the wall slid open, revealing a narrow staircase. We slipped inside, pulling it shut just as they reached us. I heard their fists pounding on the panel, but it held. We descended into a cold, damp tunnel, likely part of the old estate's foundations. Chloe led the way with her phone's light, her breathing ragged. "This leads to the garage," she said. "We can take a car and get out." But as we moved, I realized the video device was warm in my pocket. It was transmitting, and someone was tracking it. This was an unexpected problem. The evidence might be compromised already. We reached the garage, a large space filled with expensive vehicles, and I heard voices outside, guards discussing a lockdown. Chloe pointed to a sleek sedan. Keys are inside. We climbed in, and she started the engine, but the garage door didn't open. It was remotely controlled, and we were trapped again. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Leo. "I'm outside, 'cause a distraction, and I'll get the door." I told Chloe to flash the headlights and honk the horn. The noise drew the guards, and suddenly the garage door shuddered and began to rise. Leo stood there, waving us out. We sped past him, but as I looked back, I saw him surrounded by guards, fighting them off. He'd sacrificed himself for us. We hit the road, the storm still raging, and I felt a mix of relief and guilt. But then Chloe screamed, "The brakes are cut!" The car sped uncontrollably toward a sharp curve, and I braced for impact. The car skidded on the wet road, tires screeching, and I slammed my hand on the emergency brake, but it did nothing. I had to regain control or find a way to stop without crashing. The adrenaline surged, and my body ached from the jarring movements, a result of trusting others too easily. Chloe gripped the wheel, her knuckles white, and shouted, "There's a runoff ahead! Aim for the gravel!" I guided her, using my memory of the area, and we veered off the pavement, the car bouncing violently before grinding to a halt in a muddy ditch. We sat there, panting, the rain hammering the roof. The pressure was relentless. Headlights appeared behind us, pursuers from the estate. We scrambled out, slipping in the mud, and ran into the woods, the video device still in my pocket. I needed to secure the evidence and find a safe place to upload it. We trudged through the undergrowth, my cane sinking into the soft earth, until we found an abandoned hunter's cabin. Inside, it was musty, but dry, and Chloe used her phone to check the video. It was clear, showing the teenagers laughing as they killed Baron. But then, her phone died. We had no power, and the storm had taken out the grid. This disruption changed our plans. We couldn't call for help or send the video yet. I remembered Leo's hidden server details and decided to hike to the nearest town at dawn. Chloe agreed, but she was shaking, scared of what her parents would do. Suddenly, a noise outside, a twig snapping. We froze, and I peered through a crack in the door. It was Evans, the state trooper, alone and looking battered. He called out, "Elara, I know you're in there. I'm here to help." I didn't trust him, but he showed his badge and said, "Leo sent me. He's safe." I hesitated, then let him in. He had a portable charger, and we revived Chloe's phone. But as we plugged it in, Evans's radio crackled with a message, "Target acquired. Move in." He looked at me, his eyes cold, and drew his gun. "Sorry, Grandma. Orders are orders." Chloe gasped, and I realized we'd been betrayed again. I shoved the table into him, and we bolted out the back, into the night. We ran through the woods, Evans's shouts fading behind us, the rain soaking our clothes. I had to put distance between us and him, and find another way to expose the video. The exhaustion was overwhelming. My legs felt like lead, and I was coughing from the cold, the toll of constant flight. Chloe led the way, her youth giving her an edge, but she was terrified, muttering about her family disowning her. The pressure increased when we heard dogs barking. They'd brought trackers. We reached a stream and waded through it to throw off the scent, the icy water numbing my feet. I needed a new ally, someone outside the corruption. I recalled a retired judge I'd met years ago, known for his integrity, who lived nearby. We headed toward his house, using the stars to navigate, my blindness making it slow going. As we approached, lights were on inside, and a figure watched from the window. It was the judge, and he waved us in. He listened as I explained everything, showing him the video on Chloe's phone. He was horrified and agreed to help, offering to contact the FBI directly. But then his landline rang, and he answered. It was Mason's father, threatening him if he interfered. The judge hung up, pale, and said, "I can't. They have my grandson." The threat from them was suffocating. No one was safe. We left quickly, the judge giving us cash and a map to a remote library with public computers. As we walked, Chloe broke down, crying, "I can't do this anymore." I comforted her, but then a car pulled up. It was Leo, bandaged and driving a different vehicle. He said, "I escaped. Get in. I have a plan." I was wary, but we had no choice. As we drove, he explained he'd hacked into the Thorns network and found a live feed of their operations. But then Chloe's phone buzzed. A news alert. Breaking. Vigilante grandmother linked to kidnapping of teenager. They'd framed me for taking Chloe, and her photo was everywhere. I looked at her, and she whispered, "They'll never believe I came willingly." The car swerved as Leo avoided a roadblock, and we sped into the night, the net closing tighter. Leo drove us to a secluded data center he knew, where he said we could upload the video anonymously. I aimed to get the truth out before they completely destroyed my credibility. The strain was visible on all of us. Leo had a bloody bandage on his arm, and Chloe was trembling, her future ruined. The data center was a small, unmarked building, and Leo used a keycard to get us in. Inside, rows of servers hummed, and he set up a terminal to broadcast the video to multiple news outlets. The pressure spiked when alarms blared. The system had tripped a security alert. Leo worked frantically, typing codes, while I stood guard with my cane. Chloe helped, her fingers flying over the keyboard, and within minutes, the video was cued to send. But then, the doors burst open, and Mason's father strode in, flanked by armed men. "It's over," he said, smiling. Leo stood, blocking the terminal, and shouted, "It's already uploading." Mason's father laughed. "We own the servers here, nothing leaves." This was a devastating turn. We were outmaneuvered. But then, Chloe stepped forward, her voice steady. "I sent a copy to my cloud an hour ago. It's set to release at dawn unless I stop it." She'd acted on her own, a surprise move that changed everything. Mason's father's smile vanished, and he ordered his men to seize her. I swung my cane, hitting one man, and Leo tackled another. In the chaos, I grabbed Chloe, and we ran for a back exit, Leo covering us. We made it outside, but Leo didn't follow. He was overpowered. We fled into the woods, the sound of struggle fading. As we caught our breath, Chloe checked her phone. The video was indeed scheduled, but the timer showed only 2 hours left. We had to survive until then. But then, a figure emerged from the trees. Evans, holding a gun, but his hands were up. "I'm here to surrender," he said. "I have evidence against the Thorns, and I want to make amends." I didn't believe him, but he dropped a folder of documents. As I bent to pick it up, I heard a click. It was a trap, and snipers moved in around us. We were surrounded, and Evans smirked. "Game over," he said. I stood frozen, Evans's smirk etching into my memory, the sniper's lasers dotting our chests. I had to find a way to delay them until the video released, or turn this surrender to our advantage. The hopelessness was crushing. I'd dragged Chloe into this, and now we faced death, the ultimate consequence of my quest. Evans stepped closer, picking up the folder he'd dropped. "The evidence here implicates me too," he said, "but I'd rather take you down with me." The pressure was immense. Any move could get us shot. Then, Chloe spoke up, her voice shaking but clear. "If you kill us, the video goes public automatically. My lawyer has instructions." It was a bluff, but Evans hesitated. I used the moment to assess our surroundings. We were near a cliff edge, the woods thick behind us. I remembered an old trail from my past hikes and whispered to Chloe, "On my signal, run left." But Evans heard me and laughed. "No one's running anywhere." Suddenly, headlights cut through the trees, multiple vehicles, and voices shouted, "FBI, drop your weapons." It was the judge. He must have called them after all. Relief washed over me, but Evans didn't drop his gun. Instead, he grabbed Chloe, holding her as a shield. "I'm not going down alone," he yelled. The FBI agents advanced, and I stepped forward, my hands raised. "Let her go, Evans." "It's over." He backed toward the cliff, dragging Chloe, and I followed, my cane tapping on the rocky ground. The agents had him surrounded, but he was desperate. Then a shot rang out, not from Evans, but from the trees. Evans crumpled, and Chloe broke free, running to me. I held her, looking for the shooter, but saw no one. The FBI secured the area, and one agent approached me. "Elara, you're safe now. We have the evidence." But as they led us away, I noticed Evans's folder was gone, and one agent pocketed something small, a flash drive. Were they truly on our side? We were driven to a secure location, and the video released at dawn, sparking public outrage. But as I sat in a sterile room, giving my statement, I realized the fight wasn't over. The Thorns had friends in high places, and I'd made powerful enemies. Chloe was reunited with her mother, who'd survived the accident and now supported her, but I was alone again. The agent handed me a coffee, and I sipped it, the bitterness matching my thoughts. Then, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "This isn't finished. Watch your back." I deleted it, but the fear lingered. I had won a battle, but the war was just beginning. The FBI agent handed me a blanket, his smile too tight, and I knew something was wrong. I had to verify if the evidence against the Thorns was secure and if these agents were truly on my side. The comfort of the safe house felt like a cage, and every polite word from them grated on my nerves. A reminder of how trust had cost me before. Agent Miller, the one in charge, kept assuring me that the case was progressing, but he avoided direct questions about the Thorns' political connections. The pressure built when I overheard a whispered conversation in the hallway, Miller mentioning a cleanup and containing the fallout. I pretended to sleep, but my mind raced, recalling the flash drive I saw an agent pocket earlier. Later, while being escorted to the bathroom, I noticed a familiar logo on a document in Miller's briefcase. It was from the Thorns Shell Company. This was an unexpected confirmation. The corruption ran deeper than I thought. I needed to act before they silenced me for good. I feigned illness, asking for water. And when the agent left, I quickly searched the room. In a drawer, I found a burner phone, likely left by a previous occupant. I pocketed it, my hands trembling. Back in the main room, Miller announced they were moving me to a new location for safety, but his eyes darted away. I knew it was a lie. As we prepared to leave, I slipped into the kitchen and used the burner phone to call my daughter, leaving a coded message about my whereabouts. But then, Miller entered, his expression cold. "Who were you calling, Elara?" he demanded, stepping closer. I dropped the phone, shattering it, and backed away. "No one," I said, but he grabbed my arm. "We can't have you contacting outsiders," he hissed. Just then, alarms blared, the security system triggered by someone outside. Miller released me, drawing his gun, and rushed out. I seized the chance, grabbing my cane and a knife from the counter. I slipped out the back door into the night, the cold air biting my skin. I didn't know where to go, but I couldn't stay. As I ran, I heard shouts and engines starting. They were after me. I ducked behind a shed, my heart pounding, and saw multiple cars speeding away from the safe house, but not toward me. They were heading in another direction, as if distracted. I used the confusion to flee into the woods, but then my foot caught on something, and I fell, hitting my head hard. Darkness crept in, and the last thing I heard was a voice saying, "She's over here." I woke up in a dimly lit room, my head throbbing, and a stranger leaning over me. I had to assess my situation and find out who had me now. The pain was sharp, and my vision was blurrier than usual, a result of the fall and exhaustion. The man introduced himself as Dr. Aris, a veterinarian who'd found me unconscious near his clinic. He'd bandaged my head and given me water, his kindness feeling foreign after so much betrayal. The pressure mounted when I heard news reports on his radio. The FBI was searching for me, labeled as armed and dangerous. I needed to trust him, but I couldn't. Everyone had an angle. I asked about the thorns, and he frowned, saying he'd treated animals injured by their kids before. He showed me photos of abused pets, his hands shaking with anger. This was an unexpected ally. He had his own reasons to hate them. But then, his phone rang, and he stepped outside to answer. I strained to listen and caught words like reward and location. My heart sank. Was he turning me in? I grabbed my cane, ready to run, but when he returned, he looked pale. "That was my wife," he said. "The thorns threatened our clinic if we help you." I was realizing how dangerous it was to drag others into this. I decided to leave, but he stopped me, handing me a keys to an old truck. "Take it. Go to the national park. There's a ranger station there. They're independent." I thanked him and slipped out, the truck starting with a rumble. As I drove, I checked the burner phone I'd taken. It had 1 bar of signal. I called Leo's number, but it was disconnected. Then, a text came through from an unknown number. "The doctor is dead. You're next." I swerved, nearly crashing, and pulled over to vomit. They'd killed him for helping me. I drove faster, the park entrance in sight. But as I approached, I saw a roadblock, state police cars. I turned onto a dirt path, the truck bouncing violently, and headed deeper into the woods. The path ended at a cliff, with no way forward. I got out, the wind whipping around me, and saw figures emerging from the trees, not police, but armed men in civilian clothes. One raised a rifle, and I dove behind the truck as shots rang out. The glass shattered, and I crouched, trapped. Then, a voice echoed from a loudspeaker. "Elara, surrender now, or we'll burn the whole forest down." I peered out and saw Mason's father standing with the men, a smirk on his face. He had me cornered, and this time there was no escape. I knelt behind the truck, the shots peppering the metal, and knew I had to find a way out or use the terrain to my advantage. The fear was a cold knot in my stomach, and my body ached from the impacts, a price for pushing too far. Mason's father shouted again, "Come out and we'll make it quick." I scanned the area. The cliff dropped to a river below, and the woods were thick behind me. I needed a distraction. I remembered the truck's gas tank. If I could ignite it, I might create chaos. I crawled to the driver's side, keeping low, and found a lighter in the glove compartment. The pressure intensified as the men advanced, their footsteps crunching on gravel. I siphoned some gas using a hose from the truck bed, my hands slippery with sweat, and soaked a rag. Then, I heard a noise from the woods, a rustling, and a figure emerged. It was Chloe, her face determined, holding a phone. "I live-streamed this," she whispered. "They're watching worldwide. This was a shocking turn." She'd risked everything to expose them live. Mason's father saw her and roared, "Get her!" The men shifted focus, and I lit the rag, throwing it toward the gas trail. It ignited, flames roaring toward the truck. I grabbed Chloe, and we ran for the cliff edge. The explosion behind us sent heat washing over our backs. We reached the edge, and I saw a narrow path leading down to the river. "We have to jump!" I yelled, but Chloe hesitated. "I can't swim!" she cried. The men were recovering, and shots zipped past us. I pushed her onto the path, and we scrambled down, the rocks loose underfoot. Halfway down, I slipped, falling into the icy water. The current grabbed me, pulling me under, and I fought to surface. Chloe was on the bank, reaching for me, but then a hand yanked me out. It was Leo, bruised but alive. "I thought you were dead," I gasped. He helped me to shore, where Chloe joined us. "We have to move," he said. "The stream is broadcasting, but they'll jam it soon." We hurried along the riverbank, but as we rounded a bend, we saw a helicopter landing ahead, FBI emblems on its side. Agents poured out, surrounding us. Miller stepped forward, his gun drawn. "Elara, it's over. You're under arrest for terrorism." I looked at Chloe's phone. The live stream was dead. They'd cut it off, and now we were captured again. But as they cuffed me, I noticed Leo subtly nodding toward the woods. Someone was watching from the trees, and I recognized the judge from before. He mouthed, "I have a plan." Then he vanished, leaving me with a flicker of hope. The FBI shoved me into a van. Leo and Chloe separated into other vehicles, and I was alone with Miller. I had to survive this arrest and find a way to use the judge's hint to my advantage. The cuffs dug into my wrists, and the van's interior smelled of sweat and fear, a constant reminder of my powerlessness. Miller sat across from me, not speaking, but his posture was tense. The pressure built as we drove for hours, the scenery blurring past. And I realized we weren't heading to a station, but somewhere remote. I needed to keep my wits about me. I recalled the judge's words and focused on memorizing landmarks through the van's small window, a broken sign, a distinctive hill. Eventually, we stopped at a concrete building, unmarked and isolated. They led me inside to a sterile room with a table and chairs, like an interrogation cell. Miller left me there, and I waited, my mind racing. Then the door opened, and a woman in a suit entered. She introduced herself as Agent Reyes from the FBI's Internal Affairs. She said she was investigating Miller and the corruption, and she needed my testimony. This was an unexpected shift. Could she be trusted? She showed me credentials and files linking Miller to the Thorns, including bank transfers. Trusting her might get me killed, but I had no choice. I agreed to talk, and she recorded my statement. But then, Miller burst in, furious. "What is this, Reyes?" he snarled. She stood her ground. "It's over, Miller. We have you." They argued, and in the chaos, I noticed a camera in the corner. It was off. Something felt wrong. Reyes handed me a key to the cuffs, whispering, "Run when I signal." But as I unlocked them, Miller drew his gun, and Reyes did the same. They were pointing at each other. I realized this was a power struggle, and I was the pawn. I ducked under the table as shots were fired. When it quieted, I peered out. Miller was on the floor, wounded, and Reyes was standing, but her expression was cold. "Sorry, Elara," she said. "I can't let you live. You know too much." She raised her gun, but then the door exploded inward, and the judge rushed in with a team of armed men. "Stand down, Reyes!" he shouted. In the confusion, I crawled toward the exit, but Reyes fired at me. The judge tackled her, and more shots rang out. I made it to the hallway where Leo and Chloe were being held. I freed them, and we ran outside into the night. But as we fled, I saw Reyes break free and escape into the woods. The judge joined us, panting. "We have to go now," he said. "The Thorns have activated their endgame." We piled into his car and sped away. But then a news alert flashed on the radio. "Explosion at Thorn Estate. Multiple fatalities." I stared in shock. Had they destroyed their own home to cover tracks? The judge grimly said, "They're burning it all down." As we drove, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You're too late. The game has changed." I didn't understand. But then Chloe gasped, pointing at the newsfeed on her phone. It showed Mason's father, alive and well, giving a press conference, blaming me for the explosion. They'd framed me for murder, and the world was believing it. I sat in the judge's car, the world spinning as the news confirmed I was now the prime suspect in a mass murder. I had to clear my name and prove the Thorns were behind it, but the weight of their lies felt crushing. My hands shook, and the judge's driving was erratic, weaving through back roads to avoid roadblocks. Chloe was crying softly in the back seat, and Leo was on his phone, trying to contact allies. The pressure was everywhere. Every siren in the distance made me flinch, and the judge warned that his resources were limited. He drove us to an old courthouse, where he had a secure office, saying we could access sealed records there. We slipped in through a basement entrance, the air musty and cold. Inside, Leo hacked into the court's database, while I searched physical files for anything on the Thorns. This desperation stripped me of my last dignity. I was a fugitive, hunted by everyone. Then I found a folder labeled Thorn Contingency Plans. It detailed their escape routes and backup identities, including a safe house in another state. This was a critical discovery. If I could reach it, I might find evidence. But as I read, alarms blared. The building's security had been tripped. We had to leave immediately. The judge led us to a hidden tunnel used for witness protection, and we ran, the sound of doors slamming behind us. In the tunnel, I heard footsteps following. Reyes, her voice echoing. "You can't hide forever." We emerged into an alley, and the judge flagged down a trusted cab driver. As we got in, he handed me a flash drive. "This has everything. Use it wisely." Then he stayed behind, saying he'd hold them off. We drove away, but I looked back and saw him surrounded by agents. I clutched the flash drive, knowing it was my last hope. The cab took us to a bus station, where Leo arranged for tickets out of state. But as we boarded, I saw Mason watching from across the street, talking on a phone. He smiled and waved, as if he knew our every move. The bus pulled out, and I settled into my seat, the flash drive burning a hole in my pocket. Then, my phone buzzed. A message from the judge's number. "They have me. Don't trust anyone." The message was followed by a photo of him in custody. I showed it to Leo, and he paled. "We're on our own," he said. The bus rumbled on, but I knew we weren't safe. At the next stop, I saw a police car waiting, and an officer stepped on board, scanning the passengers. I slid down in my seat, pulling my hat low. He moved down the aisle, getting closer, and then paused right next to me. "Ma'am, your ID, please," he said. I handed it over, my heart in my throat. He looked at it, then at me, and his eyes narrowed. "Elara," he whispered. "I'm here to help." But his grip on my arm was too tight, and I saw a Thorn family pin on his uniform. I was caught, and this time, there was no one to save me. The officer's grip tightened on my arm, his Thorn family pin glinting under the bus lights. and I knew I had to break free before he dragged me off. My heart hammered against my ribs, and the stale air of the bus filled my lungs, a reminder of how close I was to losing everything. I glanced at Leo and Chloe. Leo was tensed, ready to act, while Chloe's eyes were wide with fear. The officer leaned in, his voice a low growl. "Come quietly and no one gets hurt." But I saw his other hand reaching for his cuffs. I couldn't let him take me. The flash drive in my pocket was my last hope. I twisted my arm, digging my nails into his wrist, and he grunted in surprise. Leo seized the moment, shouting, "Fire! There's a fire!" Panic erupted as passengers scrambled, and in the chaos, I kicked the officer's knee, hearing a satisfying crack. He stumbled back, and I yanked free, grabbing my cane. Chloe shoved past him, and we bolted for the emergency exit at the back of the bus. The door hissed open, and we jumped onto the dark roadside, rolling onto gravel. Tires screeched as the bus sped away, leaving us in silence. My shoulder ached from the fall, and my clothes were torn from another narrow escape. We hid in a ditch, listening for pursuit, but only the wind rustled the trees. Then headlights appeared, a car slowing down, and I recognized it as the judge's, but he was supposed to be captured. Leo whispered, "It's a trap." But the window rolled down, and the driver was the judge's daughter, a woman I'd met years ago. "Get in," she said urgently. "My father sent me before they took him." We climbed in, and she sped off, explaining she had a safe house nearby. But as we drove, I noticed her hands trembling on the wheel, and she kept checking the mirrors. "They're following us," she said, her voice shaky. I looked back and saw a black SUV gaining fast. She swerved onto a side road, but the SUV matched our moves. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "The flash drive is corrupted. You have nothing." I checked the drive. It was warm, and the light wasn't blinking. It might be true. Despair washed over me, but then Leo pointed ahead. "The river. We can lose them there." She nodded, pushing the car faster, and we raced toward the water, the SUV close behind. As we reached the bridge, she slammed the brakes, and we skidded to a halt. "Out! Now!" she yelled. We scrambled out, and she drove the car into the river, creating a diversion. We ran into the woods, but the SUV stopped, and men poured out, firing shots. We dove behind trees, and I heard one bullet whiz past my ear. Then a voice called out, "Elara, we have your daughter. Surrender, or she dies." I froze, my blood running cold. They'd found her, and I had no choice but to listen. I stood there, the threat to my daughter echoing in the woods, and I had to verify if it was real and find a way to save her without giving up. The fear was a physical weight, and my body trembled from the run, the accumulated exhaustion of weeks on the run. Leo pulled me deeper into the trees, his grip firm. "It could be a bluff," he whispered, but I couldn't risk it. I called my daughter's number. It rang once, then went to voicemail. The pressure mounted as the men from the SUV spread out, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Chloe handed me her phone, showing a live news feed. My daughter's face was on screen, with a caption saying she was missing and in danger. But the background was generic, no proof. I needed to think clearly. The judge's daughter had given us a location, a cabin up north, before she drove off, and we decided to head there, hoping it was safe. We moved silently through the forest, my cane tapping softly, every sound making me jump. After an hour, we reached a dirt road and found an old truck parked nearby, keys under the mat. We got in, and Leo drove, his face grim. The drive was tense, with no one speaking. The only sound, the engine's hum. Then, my phone buzzed again. A photo of my daughter, tied up in a room I didn't recognize, but her eyes were defiant. The message read, 1 hour. Come alone to the old factory on Mill Street. I knew it was a trap, but I had to go. Leo argued against it, but I insisted. Drop me off nearby, I said. He reluctantly agreed, and we changed course. As we approached the factory, I saw it was abandoned, with broken windows and graffiti. Leo parked a block away, and I got out, my cane in hand. I'll be your eyes, he said, handing me an earpiece. I'll watch from a distance. I nodded, gratitude warring with fear. I entered the factory, the smell of rust and decay filling my nose. Inside it was dark, and I heard footsteps above. I climbed the stairs, my heart pounding, and found a room with a single light bulb. My daughter wasn't there. Instead, Mason stood smiling, holding a remote. You fell for it, he said. She's safe at home, but you're not. He pressed the button, and the floor gave way beneath me. I fell into a lower level, landing hard on concrete, the impact jarring my bones. I looked up. The hole was too high to climb, and Mason laughed from above. Enjoy your tomb, Grandma, he said, and walked away. I was trapped, with no way out, and the earpiece had gone silent. Then, I heard a scraping sound from the shadows. Something was moving toward me. I pushed myself up, pain shooting through my back, and peered into the darkness, trying to identify the source of the noise. I had to find a way out of this pit and survive whatever was coming. The air was thick with dust, and my breathing was labored from yet another fall and the relentless pursuit. The scraping grew louder, and a figure emerged. It was the tunnel man from earlier, the one I thought was dead, his face bruised but determined. I escaped when they moved me, he whispered, helping me to my feet. There's a vent system we can use. This was an unexpected rescue. I hadn't thought I'd see him again. He led me to a grill in the wall, and we pried it open, crawling into a narrow duct. The pressure was intense. From outside I heard voices, Mason and others searching for me. We moved slowly, the metal creaking under our weight, and I worried it would give way. After what felt like hours, we emerged into a storage room filled with old machinery. The tunnel man explained he'd been hiding here, gathering evidence on the Thorns' illegal dumping in the area. He handed me a folder of documents linking them to environmental crimes, which could add to their charges. But then my earpiece crackled to life. Leo's voice, faint but clear. Elara, I'm outside. The place is surrounded. You need to get to the roof. There's a helicopter coming. I didn't know if I could trust it, but we had no other options. We found a staircase and climbed to the roof, the wind whipping around us. Sure enough, a helicopter was approaching, but it had no markings. As it hovered, a ladder dropped down, and a figure waved us up. It was Agent Reyes, the one who'd betrayed me before. I'm here to make amends, she shouted over the rotor noise. The FBI has new leadership. They're cleaning house. I hesitated, but the tunnel man urged me on. We climbed the ladder, and as we rose, I saw police cars converging below. Reyes pulled us into the helicopter, and we took off, the factory shrinking beneath us. But then, she smiled, a cold, familiar smile. Sorry, but the Thorns pay better, she said, and drew a gun. The pilot turned. It was Mason's father. I was captured again, and this time, in the air. There was nowhere to run. The tunnel man lunged at Reyes, and the helicopter swerved violently. I grabbed for anything to hold on to, and the gun went off, the sound deafening. Then, the helicopter spun, and we started to fall. The helicopter spiraled downward, the world tilting wildly, and I clung to a seat strap, my mind racing to survive the crash. The noise was overwhelming, and the G-force pressed me back, a brutal reminder of my mortality. Reyes and the tunnel man struggled, and Mason's father fought the controls, shouting curses. I saw the ground rushing up, a forested area, and braced for impact. The crash was a jarring slam, metal screeching and glass shattering. I was thrown forward, hitting my head, and everything went black for a moment. When I came to, I was hanging upside down, held by the strap, and the cabin was a wreck. Reyes was unconscious, bleeding from a head wound, and the tunnel man was groaning, trying to free himself. Mason's father was dead, impaled by a piece of debris. I had to get out before the fuel ignited. I unbuckled and dropped to the ceiling, my body aching. I helped the tunnel man, and we crawled out through a broken window. The helicopter was smoking, and we stumbled away, just as it exploded, the heat searing our backs. We collapsed in a clearing, gasping for air. I had lost the flash drive in the crash, but the tunnel man had the documents from the factory. I needed to get those to safety and find a way to expose the thorns once and for all. I was battered, and my hope was fading, a clear sign of the struggle. We heard sirens in the distance. Help or more enemies? We moved into the trees, using my cane to navigate, and found a stream to clean our wounds. The tunnel man, whose name was Ben, shared that he'd been a whistleblower for years, and the thorns had ruined his life. He had a backup of the evidence stored online, and he gave me the access codes. This was a turning point. I had a way to fight back, even without the physical drive. But then, my phone buzzed. It was Chloe, saying she and Leo were safe at a motel and had news. We headed there, hiking for miles, and when we arrived, they showed me a news report. The public was turning against the Thorns after the helicopter crash footage leaked online. People were demanding justice. For a moment, I felt hope. But then Leo pointed out that Mason was still free and had taken over his father's operations. He was more dangerous than ever. We decided to release Ben's evidence immediately, using the motel's Wi-Fi. As we uploaded the files, the door burst open, and Mason stood there, flanked by armed men. "You just don't know when to quit," he said, raising a gun. "But this ends now." He fired, and Leo shoved me aside, taking the bullet. He fell, blood spreading across his chest, and I screamed, rushing to him. Mason laughed, and his men advanced. We were cornered, with no way out, and Leo was dying in my arms. I knelt over Leo, his breathing shallow, and I had to stop the bleeding and find a way to fight back against Mason. The rage was a fire in my veins, and my hands were covered in Leo's blood, a brutal reminder of this war. Chloe was sobbing, and Ben stood protectively in front of us, his fists clenched. Mason sneered. "This is what happens when you mess with my family." He aimed his gun at me, but then sirens wailed outside, growing louder. Police cars surrounded the motel, and through the window I saw agents swarming the area. Mason's men hesitated, and he barked orders to fall back. They retreated out the back, but not before Mason shot the motel's router, destroying our internet connection. The upload was interrupted, but Ben assured me the files were partially sent. The police entered, and this time it was a different team. Agent Reyes was with them, but she was in cuffs, and a new agent in charge introduced himself as Director Holt. "We have Mason's location," he said. "He's at the Thorn estate, preparing to flee the country." He offered me a deal: help them capture Mason, and they'd clear my name. I agreed, but I didn't trust them fully. Paramedics arrived and took Leo to the hospital. I prayed he'd survive. Chloe and Ben stayed behind, while I went with Holt to the estate. On the way, he explained that the evidence we'd leaked had triggered a federal investigation and arrests were being made. But Mason had hostages, his mother, and some staff. We arrived at the estate, which was cordoned off, and snipers took positions. Holt gave me a vest and an earpiece. "You go in first," he said. "He'll listen to you." I entered the mansion, my cane tapping on the marble floor, and found Mason in the study, holding a gun to his mother's head. "Stay back!" he yelled. I stopped, raising my hands. "It's over, Mason," I said. "Let her go." He laughed, but then his mother spoke, her voice steady. "I'm done protecting you, Mason. I have evidence too. Everything your father did." She handed me a small device from her pocket. Mason stared in shock, and in that moment I tackled him, and the gun went off. The shot hit the ceiling, and agents rushed in, subduing him. His mother was safe, and Mason was arrested. I stood there, breathing heavily, as they led him away. But as I turned to leave, Holt approached me, his expression grim. "There's one more thing," he said. "The evidence points to higher-ups, people in the government. This isn't over." He handed me a file, and inside I saw photos of judges and politicians involved. I realized the fight was bigger than I imagined, and my safety was never guaranteed. As I walked out, my phone rang. It was my daughter, crying. "Mum, are you okay?" she asked. I told her I was, but as we spoke, I saw a car idling across the street, its window down, and a familiar face watching me. It was one of the politicians from the file, smiling coldly. He raised a phone, and mine buzzed with a message. "We're watching. Always." I ended the call, my hands shaking, and knew that even with Mason gone, the shadow of the thorns would linger. I got into Holt's car, but as we drove away, I kept looking back, wondering who I could really trust. The road ahead was uncertain, and the battle had just taken a new turn. I sat in Director Holt's car, the politician's cold smile burning in my mind, and I knew the arrest of Mason was just a pause in the storm. I had to secure the evidence Holt gave me and find a way to expose the higher-ups without getting killed. The adrenaline from the estate was fading, leaving my body aching and my hands shaking from the constant fear. Holt drove in silence, his eyes darting to the mirrors, and I sensed his tension. "We're taking you to a secure facility," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. The pressure mounted when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "The file is incomplete. You're missing the key piece." I checked the documents Holt had handed me. They listed names and transactions, but no smoking gun. I needed to trust Holt, but after so many betrayals, every word felt like a trap. Then Holt's phone rang, and he answered on speaker. It was his superior, demanding an update. Holt assured him I was contained, but I heard a subtle shift in his tone, a hesitation that made me wary. Suddenly, he swerved off the main road, pulling into an abandoned parking lot. "We have to talk," he said, turning to me. "The politician you saw, Senator Greer, he's the one pulling the strings. He has agents in my team." This was an unexpected confession. Holt might be an ally after all. He explained he'd been working undercover to bring Greer down, but the operation was compromised. He gave me a hidden drive from his pocket. "This has everything: audio recordings, bank records. But you have to get it to the press yourself. I can't protect you much longer." As he spoke, headlights flashed behind us, a black sedan speeding our way. Holt cursed. "They found us!" He shoved the drive into my hand. "Run, now, through the back alley." I grabbed my cane and bolted from the car, hearing shouts and engines revving. I dashed into the darkness, The drive clutched tight. But as I ran, I realized Holt hadn't followed. Glancing back, I saw him surrounded by men in suits, and one raised a gun. A shot rang out, and Holt fell. I kept running, my heart pounding, until I reached a bus stop. I boarded the first bus that came, sinking into a seat, but as it pulled away, I saw the black sedan still following. The driver's eyes met mine in the mirror, and he nodded slowly. They were tracking me, and I had nowhere to hide. The bus rumbled through the night, and I clutched the drive Holt had given me, knowing I had to get it to a safe outlet before Greer's men caught up. My body was a tapestry of pains, every bruise and cut a reminder of how deep this corruption ran. The bus was nearly empty, but I felt every pair of eyes on me, real or imagined. I needed to find a place to upload the files, but my phone was dead, and I had no charger. The pressure intensified when the bus driver announced an unscheduled stop, police checkpoint ahead. I saw flashing lights through the window, and my stomach tightened. Were they here for me? I slipped the drive into my shoe, preparing for the worst. The bus stopped, and officers boarded, checking IDs. When they reached me, I handed over my fake ID, my heart in my throat. One officer studied it, then me, and his eyes narrowed. "Step off the bus, ma'am," he said. I complied, my cane tapping on the pavement, and they led me to a squad car. But instead of arresting me, the officer whispered, "I'm with Holt. He's alive, in critical condition. He sent me to get you to safety." I was stunned. Holt had survived the shooting. I didn't know if I could believe him, but I had no choice. He drove me to a small clinic on the outskirts of town, where Holt was being treated in secret. The doctor, a grim-faced woman, led me to his room. Holt was bandaged and pale, but awake. "Elara," he rasped. "Greer knows you have the drive. He's issuing a national alert framing you for terrorism. You have hours before it's public." It was clear what this fight would cost me. I was about to become the most wanted person in the country. I needed to act fast. Holt gave me a number for a journalist in another state, one he trusted. I used the clinic's phone to call, but the line was dead. Greer had cut the lines. Then the doctor rushed in. "They're here? Go out the back." I helped Holt to his feet, and we stumbled into an alley, but men were already waiting. Holt pushed me behind a dumpster. "Take this," he said, handing me a key. "Storage Unit 42B, more evidence. Go now." He stepped out, drawing fire, and I ran, his sacrifice fueling my rage. I found a motorcycle parked nearby, hotwired it with skills from my youth, and sped off. But as I rode, I saw news vans gathering at the clinic, and my face flashed on a screen. Terrorist alert. Greer had made his move, and now the whole country was hunting me. I rode the motorcycle through back roads, the wind whipping my hair, the key to the storage unit burning a hole in my pocket. I had to reach Unit 42B and retrieve the evidence before Greer's men found it. The exhaustion was a heavy blanket, and my vision blurred from lack of sleep. But I pushed on, knowing Holt's sacrifice couldn't be in vain. I reached the storage facility at dawn, a sprawling place with rows of identical units. I found 42B and used the key, the lock clicking open. Inside, it was packed with boxes, and I quickly searched, finding files upon files of incriminating data, photos, emails, even videos of Greer meeting with known criminals. This was the proof I needed. But as I loaded them into a backpack, I heard vehicles approaching, SUVs with tinted windows. I slipped out the back, but they surrounded the unit. Greer himself stepped out, smiling. "Elara, you've been a nuisance long enough," he said. "Hand over the files, and I'll make your death quick." I stood my ground, my cane held tight. It's over, Greer. The truth is out. He laughed. No, it's not. I own the truth. Then, a voice echoed from the rooftops. It was Chloe, using a megaphone. I'm live streaming this, Senator. The world is watching. She'd followed me, risking everything for justice. Greer's smile vanished, and he ordered his men to seize her. But then, Ben and Leo, alive and bandaged, emerged from the shadows, armed with pipes. We're not letting you win, Leo shouted. A fight erupted, and I used the chaos to run for the motorcycle. I revved the engine, but Greer grabbed my arm, his grip like iron. You're not going anywhere, he snarled. I swung my cane, hitting his knee, and he stumbled back. I sped away, the backpack secure. But as I looked back, I saw Greer's men overpowering my friends. I had to get help. I rode to the nearest police station, bursting in with the evidence, but the officers just stared at me. One recognized me from the alert and drew his gun. On the ground, he yelled. I raised my hands, the backpack at my feet, and knew I'd walked into another trap. Then, the station's TV switched to a news channel. Chloe's live stream was airing, showing Greer's confession under duress. The officers hesitated, and in that moment, I grabbed the backpack and ran out the back door. But as I escaped, I saw Greer on the screen, smiling despite it all. He'd anticipated this and had a backup plan. My phone buzzed. A message from him. You may have won the battle, but I have your daughter. Come to the capital, or she dies. I stood in an alley, the message about my daughter freezing my blood, and I knew I had to face Greer directly to save her. The evidence in my backpack felt worthless if I lost her, and the guilt of dragging her into this was crushing. I called her number, but it went to voicemail. Then, a photo came through, her tied up in a room with Capitol buildings in the window. I had no choice but to go. I hitchhiked to the city, the ride silent and tense. And when I arrived, the Capitol was bustling with people, unaware of the drama unfolding. I needed a plan to get inside and rescue her without getting caught. I used the public library computers to access the evidence files, uploading them to multiple secure servers set to release if I didn't check in hourly. The pressure was immense. Every cop on the street felt like a threat, and my face was on every screen. I disguised myself with a hat and scarf, blending into the crowd, and approached the Capitol building. Greer had given me instructions to come alone to his office. I entered through a side door, my cane tapping on the marble floors, and found his office empty except for him and my daughter, gagged and bound to a chair. Elara, Greer said, calm as ever. I knew you'd come. Now hand over the evidence, and she lives. I set the backpack down, but I'd hidden a copy of the drive in my cane. Let her go first, I demanded. He smiled and untied her, but as she ran to me, guards rushed in, surrounding us. You didn't think I'd let you leave, did you? Greer said. But then, the doors burst open, and Director Holt, alive and leading a team of federal agents, charged in. It's over, Greer. We have everything. Greer laughed. Do you? Check your feeds. The agents' radios crackled with news. Greer had activated a kill switch, erasing all digital evidence. My heart sank. Had I lost? But I remembered the physical copies in my cane. I snapped it open, revealing the drive, and handed it to Holt. This is the original, I said. Greer's face fell, and he was arrested. My daughter hugged me, sobbing, and I felt a moment of relief. But as we walked out, Holt pulled me aside. Greer wasn't the top. He answered to someone else. The fight isn't over. I stared at him, the victory feeling hollow. Then my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Well played, but the game has just begun. I looked around, but saw no one. The shadow was still there, and I knew I'd never be safe. I stood on the steps of the Capitol, my daughter safe beside me, but the unknown message weighed on my soul. I had to decide whether to keep fighting or find a way to live in peace with what I'd achieved. The media swarmed around us, calling me a hero, but the applause felt empty without Baron by my side. I'd lost friends, my health, and pieces of myself in this war, and the toll was etched into every line on my face. Holt offered me protection in a new identity, but I declined. I was tired of running. Instead, I used the remaining evidence to ensure Greer and his associates were prosecuted, and I testified in closed hearings, knowing it might not root out all the corruption, but it was a start. Leo recovered from his injuries and opened a shelter for abused animals in Baron's memory, and Chloe went to college, determined to fight injustice from within the system. Ben disappeared into the shadows, but he sent occasional updates, reminding me that the network was still being dismantled. I moved to a small house in the countryside, where the silence was a balm, and I adopted a retired guide dog, not to replace Baron, but to honor him. The days were slow, and I spent them tending a garden, the soil under my fingers a grounding presence. Sometimes at night, I'd dream of the chase, but I'd wake to the sound of the dog's gentle breathing, and I'd remember that I'd faced the monsters and survived. One afternoon, I received a letter from Mason, now in prison, expressing remorse, not for me, but for getting caught. I burned it, letting the ashes scatter in the wind. The threat never fully vanished. Now and then, I'd see a strange car or get a cryptic call, but I learned to live with it, no longer fueled by rage, but by a quiet resilience. I visited Baron's grave, placing fresh flowers there, and for the first time I didn't feel the sting of loss, but a sense of peace. The world hadn't changed much, but I had, and that was enough. I sat on my porch, the dog at my feet, and watched the sunset, knowing that some battles are won not by destroying the enemy, but by outlasting them. The darkness would always be there, but so would the light, and I'd learned to cherish both.